Under the cold glare of the ER lights, Ly Tu Diem lies unconscious, her body frail after days of wandering the streets without food or shelter, doctors fighting desperately, yet her chances fade with every second. Across the city, Toan survives a near-fatal accident thanks to Mai Huong's daring rescue, his guarded heart stirred by her apparent sacrifice. But behind the heroism hides a calculated deception, one that may cost him more than he can imagine. Will truth come before it's too late for Diem? Subscribe now and follow this gripping, heart-wrenching story to its shocking revelation. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room buzzed faintly, casting a pale, almost ghostly glow over the scene. On the stretcher, Ly Tu Diem lay motionless, her skin the color of winter snow, her lips drained of all warmth. Her once bright eyes were closed, lashes trembling slightly as though in some distant dream she could not quite escape from. Every shallow breath she drew was a fragile thread keeping her tethered to life, and with each second, that thread seemed to grow thinner. Around her, the air was heavy with the smell of antiseptic, sharp and sterile, mingling with the faint, metallic tang of the oxygen mask pressed over her mouth and nose. The doctors moved with a precision born from urgency, gloved hands adjusting 4 lines, voices clipped but controlled as they called out vitals and instructions. One nurse pressed a stethoscope to Diem's chest, frowning as she struggled to find strength in the heartbeat beneath. Another wiped away the dirt and grime that still clung stubbornly to Diem's clothes and skin, the remnants of days, maybe weeks, spent wandering without shelter, without rest, without the dignity of a safe place to call her own. It was clear to everyone in the room, her body was exhausted, pushed far beyond its limits. The charts already painted a grim picture: hypothermia, dehydration, severe malnutrition. The words "critical condition" were spoken softly but with a weight that made the room feel colder. Outside the curtained bay, the hospital's corridors echoed with hurried footsteps and the distant wail of another ambulance siren. But here, time felt suspended. The chief physician, a man with decades of experience and a face etched with lines from years of delivering both miracles and bad news, glanced at the monitor, his jaw tightening. The beeping of the heart monitor was irregular, too slow, too uneven. He looked up at the team. "We may lose her," he said quietly, the words landing like a stone in the pit of every stomach present. No one replied, they simply worked faster, as if sheer determination could hold her here. Diem's journey to this cold bed had been a silent tragedy. No one in the room knew that she had been walking the streets for days, sleeping under flickering street lamps or on weathered park benches, shivering through the night air with only her thin coat for warmth. Hunger had gnawed at her stomach until even pain faded into a dull, constant ache. The world had blurred into a haze of fatigue and disorientation, and her feet had carried her without direction, driven only by the instinct to survive another hour, another step. When she finally collapsed alone, unseen, her body crumpling on a deserted sidewalk, it had been fate, or perhaps mercy, that brought an old shopkeeper to find her and call for help. Now, surrounded by strangers in white coats, Diem was no longer fighting against the cold wind or the hunger in her belly. She was fighting something far more dangerous, the slow, relentless pull of the dark. Somewhere inside, her body was screaming for rest, urging her to let go, to sink into the comforting nothingness. But life still clung stubbornly to her, even as her pulse weakened. The doctors fought alongside her in silence, their tools and training forming a fragile shield between her and the void. And yet, even with all their effort, the prognosis was grim. The chief physician scribbled notes for the attending nurse, his voice low, "Prepare for the worst. We have to inform the next of kin." But the question hung in the air, did she even have anyone left to call? Across the city, the night carried a very different kind of tension. In the dim glow of a street lamp, Toan stood on the sidewalk, his breath still uneven, his mind replaying the last 10 minutes over and over. It had all happened so fast, the screech of tires, the blinding flash of headlights bearing down on him, and then, her. Mai Huong had appeared out of nowhere, her figure cutting sharply against the chaos, arms outstretched as she shoved him out of the vehicle's deadly path. He remembered the thud of impact, not against him, but against her, and the sharp, metallic taste of fear that had flooded his mouth. The driver's shouts, the gasps from bystanders, the shrill wail of a siren approaching, it all felt like pieces of a dream, unreal and jagged. Yet the warmth of Mai Huong's hand still lingered faintly on his arm, and the image of her pale face, contorted in pain yet strangely calm, kept flashing before his eyes. She could have been killed. For him. The thought pressed heavily on his chest, sparking a strange ache that wasn't entirely fear or guilt, something deeper, more unsettling. Toan had always prided himself on being careful, keeping his life and his emotions in precise order. Yet in that moment, all his usual guardrails had crumbled. The sheer recklessness of what she had done, putting herself between him and death, broke through his walls in a way he hadn't thought possible. His pulse was still racing, not just from adrenaline but from the realization that someone had cared enough to risk everything for him. In the dark corners of his mind, where feelings often lay dormant, a flicker of warmth took root. The paramedics were tending to Mai Huong now, checking her injuries, speaking to her in urgent but steady voices. She brushed them off with surprising strength, insisting she was fine, her eyes darting toward him as if to reassure him before herself. That look, steady, unwavering, made something twist inside him. He found himself stepping closer, unable to stop his gaze from locking on hers. In that instant, the noise of the street seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them suspended in a fragile silence. "Why did you?" he began, but the words faltered. How could he ask why she had thrown herself into harm's way? The answer was as obvious as it was overwhelming. Gratitude, heavy and unfamiliar, tangled with a subtle but undeniable pull toward her. Yet even as he stood there, caught between confusion and something dangerously close to admiration, the rest of the world was shifting without him knowing. Somewhere far away, in the sterile, white-walled hospital room, Ly Tu Diem lay unconscious, fighting for her life. Her breath was shallow, her body frail, her silent struggle unseen and unacknowledged by the man who once swore to protect her. Toan had no idea that his absence from her side tonight might one day haunt him. No idea that every second he spent here, in this dim-lit street with Mai Huong, was a second Diem's life hung more precariously in the balance. He only knew that his heart, so disciplined and guarded for so long, was now thrumming with an emotion he could not quite name, an emotion sparked by the woman who, in his eyes, had just saved him from death. And somewhere, deep beneath that surface of relief and gratitude, the first seeds of a dangerous misstep were being planted. But the truth, hidden beneath the fractured glow of the street lamps, was far darker than Toan could imagine. That accident that now lived so vividly in his mind as an act of pure courage was, in reality, a performance carefully scripted and rehearsed by Mai Huong. Every detail, from the screeching brakes to the desperate shove, had been orchestrated with the precision of a playwright setting the final act of a tragedy. She had planned it for weeks. It began with a rented car driven by a man she trusted to follow her exact instructions. Not too fast to cause real catastrophe, not too slow to break the illusion of danger. She had chosen the street, a narrow, dim-lit road that Toan often used at this hour, and timed it perfectly so that he would be stepping off the curb just as the headlights flared into view. Even the bystanders, gasping in shock, were unwitting participants, drawn in by the raw believability of the scene. In those brief seconds, Mai Huong had risked enough to leave bruises, enough to seem selfless, but never enough to truly endanger her life. And when she fell, she had done so with grace, landing in a way that would look brutal but cause only minor injury. Pain, after all, was a small price for the kind of gratitude she intended to plant in Toan's heart. As she sat now on the back of the ambulance, feigning weakness while answering the paramedics' questions, a small flicker of satisfaction burned behind her downcast eyes. She could already see the shift in him, the way his gaze lingered, the hesitation in his voice when he tried to thank her. It was working. The image of the selfless savior had taken root, and from here, she only needed to water it with moments of quiet sacrifice, subtle vulnerability, and well-timed devotion. What she did not see, what she could not have known, was that her stagecraft was unfolding at the exact same hour that Ly Tu Diem's body was failing. In a sterile hospital bed miles away, Diem's pulse flickered like a candle in the wind. The doctors worked tirelessly, but the odds were slipping away. Her name had not been called into the night. No familiar hand had clasped hers in reassurance. Toan, the one she might have thought would come, was instead standing under the dim streetlight, his mind tangled with the memory of another woman's supposed bravery. Fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of timing. As the ambulance doors closed on Mai Huong, sealing her in the role of the night's heroine, the driver started the engine with a low rumble. She leaned back against the stretcher, allowing her head to loll just enough to appear fragile. But inside, her mind was sharp, already moving to the next step. Tonight was only the beginning. She had entered his life as the woman who saved him, but she intended to stay as the woman he could not live without. And so, while Toan lingered outside the ambulance, torn between wanting to follow her to the hospital and wanting to gather his thoughts, the city breathed on, indifferent to the invisible threads being pulled. Somewhere in its depths, a heart monitor in an ER room beeped slower and slower, the sound nearly drowned by the hum of the night. If Toan had known the truth, if he had seen the careful choreography, the feigned pain, the whispered instructions to the driver, perhaps he would have run from her instead of toward her. But for now, the deception was perfect, seamless, and suffused with the kind of emotion that blinds even the most cautious hearts. And by the time he discovered the truth, if he ever did, it might already be far too late, not just for him, but for the woman lying alone on the brink of death.
Hello.